So now we want to move into, we need to provide a service. So there are essential services for emergency shelters, um, transitional housing, permanent housing, and rapid rehousing. So if it's an emergency shelter, they are obviously going to be staying there tonight. I need to be sure that I'm recording the housing service. So that should be my first service. So I'm going to go down here and I'm looking for my housing service. What you can see, these are the categories. This is the service category title. I'm going to click on my caret drop down arrow here to the right, the bottom at the housing. And because this is for families, I'm going to select housing for families. And I want to be sure to include my kid because my kid is going to be part of, will be at the shelter as well. And then what we want to do for an emergency shelter, permanent housing, transitional housing, we want to think about what is the standard for our program. If your program is an emergency shelter that is typically 90 days, then our recommendation is push out your end date on the service for the 90 days. If your program is typically a 90-day, but you do offer extensions to up to 120 days, then go ahead and push out that housing service to however you need to record it. That is okay. For permanent housing projects, again, we recommend that you, for those, because they're going to be there for, most likely for years, it is okay to push out that housing service out a few years. So I'm going to push this out 90 days. And so now I have my start date and my end date. And so this will be when I'm getting into July, I'll want to make sure that I am occasionally reviewing my clients' services to make sure that if I need to extend out my housing service, I can and have. Once I have this here and I hit submit, I still stay on the provide services page because there may be other services I need to provide. For example, being that this is, I've started their enrollment, maybe the next thing I'm going to do is provide some general case management services. So I'll just go to case management and I'm going to say general case management here. And this is for both folks. So I'm going to toggle on my kid. And the geolocation means that if I'm out in the field and I'm providing a case management, I can do a geolocation, kind of like you can do the field interaction up here. You could do the same thing within your services. I'm in the office today, so therefore I don't need to do a geolocation, and I'm going to go ahead and hit submit. So at this time I've enrolled my 2 clients. I've provided their housing service and their case management service. So just to show you how that looks, I'm going to go to history. And now you see the 2 services here. You'll see there's the start date and the end date. Here's the one where I projected out by 3 months. And if I go up to the very top and go to programs and just look at the program history, you'll see I now have the program here. And again, here are the menued options. One thing to point out is when you're working within your agencies, if your client is already enrolled in your program, you're not going to find that option down here. So here we have the entry exit emergency shelter. And when I scroll down, I only have the yellow one. The Sacramento one is not here any longer because they're actively enrolled. So I want to review a few specific data elements from the enrollment screen for various projects. So I'm going to kind of roll us back a little bit so we can review those. So we talked about the type of residence of where they slept last night and the length of stay, meaning that wherever it was they were sleeping last night, how long have they been sleeping there? And then the 2 data elements that were not collected in the emergency shelter was the date of engagement and the move-in date that we talked about on the life of a program enrollment. And for the date of engagement, that pertains to emergency shelter programs that are night-by-night shelters. These are typically the winter warming shelters or those seasonal shelters over the winter. And then for street outreach, we also have the date of engagement. And then for the move-in date, that's permanent housing projects, permanent supportive housing projects, and rapid rehousing programs. So I'm going to go to another client quickly so I can show you how that looks. So what I have here is here's a street outreach program. When I click on the edit button to the left, I'm now within that street outreach program. And if I go to their enrollment screen, what you'll see is here's all the information. Like I said, this is very similar to the other program enrollment screen as well. But then we have a date of engagement. So when you're enrolling folks in street outreach or the night-by-night shelters, it is okay to leave this field blank. This is the only field that you can leave blank and complete the enrollment screen. It is expected that once you have the date of engagement, or essentially you have begun the work to start resolving their housing crisis, you want to go back into this screen and put in this date. Once you make any changes on this screen, you want to be sure that you scroll all the way down and hit Save Changes. It is okay to edit the enrollment screen. So for example, the times we would edit a screen is at enrollment. The client does not disclose that they had any income, and then a couple weeks later when we're working with them, we find out that they actually do have income. So at that time, what we want to do is revisit the enrollment screen and make the edit. So the enrollment screen questions, should be answered true to the date that we enrolled them, with the exception being the date of engagement. Rapid rehousing and permanent housing projects, I'm going to go to one of those to show you. So again, I'm going to this test client and under programs, and then here is a rapid rehousing project. When I click on the edit button there, I'm now within the rapid rehousing program. I'm going to their enrollment screen here on the left. And again, you're going to see that this looks very similar to all the other ones, except for we have a move-in date, and you can see here this move-in date is left blank. So again, this is one of those, this is the only field on this screen that we can save changes, and if this is blank, the system will allow you to save those changes. It's also, this is the only field that will be edited after the program enrollment here. So for example, let's say the project start was 9/13. Let's say they moved in on October 1st. We would scroll down and hit Save Changes. And what we have here is changes have been saved. Please review the flagged fields for accuracy. In this case, the name of the case manager was not inputted. So the system is just letting us know that we have a blank field, and are we sure we want it blank? Okay, I'm going to go back to my test client that we've been working on. And then I want to just make sure we've covered everything. So again, this is where we were talking about the date of engagement and a move-in date, and how typically when if this is for an outreach project, path or array, that whenever we provide a service, we should also be doing the current living situation assessment. So I'm going to show you how to do that next. If the interaction between your staff and the client is more than just the receiving a bed night, and they're receiving other services and not the bed night, then what we want to do, so if they just came in for case management, then we want to do a current living situation. For supportive services projects, whenever their living situation changes, we want to do a current living situation, or we want to do one within every 90 days. This will keep folks active and on the community queue in Sacramento for those housing referrals. Okay, other services that I want to go over. For general services like case management, those can be used in any project type, but we do need to have a housing service recorded for permanent housing projects, permanent supportive housing projects, transitional housing projects, and emergency shelters. These are an essential service that needs to be recorded. For the emergency shelters that are night by night, we need to record a bed night. So that is done every night that the person is at the shelter. And then for rapid rehousing, we want to record rental assistance when our project is subsidizing their rent. Other projects that can also have rental assistance is the homeless prevention programs and supportive services, but for both of those, they are very time limited and typically are only one-time rental assistance, whereas rapid rehousing projects are usually an ongoing subsidy that is still time limited, but it's usually greater than just the one time. I'm just trying to check the chat for questions. There's one question that is the house with service option only for emergency shelters. The answer is no. You'll see that for the permanent housing projects, permanent supportive housing, transitional housing, and the emergency shelters. So for the rental assistance service, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the rapid rehousing, and to provide that service, we do have one here. And so essentially what we can do is we have a couple options. We can either edit this, sorry, a little tongue-tied. We could either extend it out for a period of time. So in other words, if we know that we're going to be providing the rental assistance for 6 months, we can have the start date be on the first date that we're going to provide the rental assistance and have it end on the last day that we would provide the rental assistance. And then within it, we can add our expenses. So to show you how that looks is when I go into this rental assistance, I'm going to click on the edit button. And I can change my end date. So if I want to say that we are going to be providing this service from September 1st, 2020 through November 1st, 2020, in other words, 3 rental assistance. I can hit Save Changes. And then what we can do is then add the expense for those 3 times. So we already have one here on the 1st for 500. So let's say we're going to do 400 on October 1st. We can record a check number, a vendor, and notes. And then maybe we did another service on another rental assistance on November 1st. And what and I'm just giving you an example of maybe what this project is doing is reducing the amount of subsidy each time. So then you'll see that 3 subsidies for the rental assistance, and what we have here is the start of their service and the last time they will receive the service. If we didn't have a rental assistance service already logged, to do that you would just go to Provide Services and you would find your rental assistance. And we want to do this for individuals. And we can say the start date was today. And again, I can project this out a few months. And my expense date starts today. And let's say it was $1,000. And then I can submit and add my service. So the next thing I want to show you is what it looks like when I provide the same service over time, multiple times. So I'm going to go back to my other client that we had, the case management one that we just created today. And the really nice thing about active services is here's that general case management service. So I can go the long way to provide that service by going to programs, and then I can go into my program here on the left, and then I go to provide services, and then go into general case management here, and then click on my general case management here. And let's say that this is Sunday, and this time I'm not going to include my kid, and I can hit submit, and then I'm done. But another way to provide services that could be a little faster, so if you see active services on the side, I'm going back to the profile. So here's that active service. If I click on this edit button here, it takes me into, well, let me do it. Well, darn it, I thought it was going to let me. It used to let me add the service that way, so it looks like we do need to go the long way in. But what we can do here is it shows us the start and end date. It will show us for which program this service is being conducted. It'll give us the attendance. And if I needed to delete a record, like, oh, wait a second, it actually wasn't Sunday, it was Monday, I got the wrong date, I can click here and delete it. It's going to ask me if I'm sure. And then going into my program, go back into services and my general case management. And then I'm going to say it was Monday that I provided this service and I needed to add my kid, and I'm hitting submit. And then pretending that it's been another 2 weeks and I'm meeting with my client again, and I'm doing another just general case management. And then when I'm done, I'm going to keep my kid on and hit submit. When we go back into the history for this client, we still only see the one line, but we'll see the start date, or the day they had the service the first time, and here's the date they had the service the last time. And if I click on the edit button to go into that service and scroll down, you're going to see each record for those. On the housing service, a couple things that I want to make sure that people are aware of is, for housing, the way the service is recorded, it's recorded on the evening that the overnight or the housing service started. So for example, if it's an individual bed night, that an overnight typically encompasses 2 calendar days, but HMIS can only record it as one date. So we record it on the evening that it started, not the morning that it ended. So for example, this is a single bed night where the client came in on the 8th, stayed the night, and left on the following day. So although it encompasses 2 calendar days, the service in HMIS would be recorded on the 8th. If it's a housing service over time, like an emergency shelter that's an entry-exit or transitional housing, this shows you a very shortened week. But to give you an example, this would be a client that began the housing on the 16th and then exited on the 21st. Our housing service would be the 16th through the 20th. So our end date would end the day prior to the program exit in this case. Because again, when we record housing services, the housing is for the evening that it began. If we had this be the 16th through the 21st, you'll see that in the evening they weren't there. So it would look like that they'd actually were there another day. The attendance tool. So earlier this morning, I showed everybody the attendance tool, or just spoke about it briefly. What that is up here at the very top. This is really great for emergency shelters or for those programs that offer like classes or workshops. So what you'll do is you click on attendance, and then it gives you the full list of all of your services that your agency offers, not the project. This is by agency. So typically this could be pretty messy in a very, very long list. You can see we have over 6 pages of services. So when we have had this situation with some programs that have a service that they do in bulk, like I said, maybe it's a class, so they have like a budgeting class and 30 people show up, so they need to record that service for 30 people. Using the attendance tool can be a very fast, easy way to record that service. When we record services like that, what we've done typically is edited the naming convention of the service item, so it'll pop up at the very top. And that way, all of these other services are really services that you should be going into the client record to record. So once I'm here, I'm just going to go ahead and use my general case management. And again, I'm going by agency, not client record. And when I click on the edit button here, then what it's going to tell me is Here's my two people who have had this service today. Here are clients that have had this service within the last 4 months from the agency, not the program, but the agency. And then we have the ability to search for clients specifically. Here's the date that we're recording the service. So if I wanted to record this service, for example, my Lindsay test client, the nice thing is if that client has had this service in the last 4 months, all I have to do is click on the add button, and then you'll see that it popped up over here. I can do the same for this client, this CPH October test adult, and my grandparent adult. So you can see this is a really fast way where if it's a service that folks have been receiving, like your projects have classes and your clients tend to go through several different classes, or it's a series, and so they maybe it's like a DBT class where it's a series of 6 classes in 6 weeks. This is a nice way that if they've had it, you can do a quick add. The other thing you can do is you can search for the client name over here on the right hand side at the top, status and annual assessments. So I'm going to go back to search, and I'm going to go back to my test adult. It has been 3 months since I enrolled my client. Since they've been enrolled, they've gotten a job, but they've also been diagnosed with anxiety. So what I want to do is go into my program enrollment, which is right here. And I want to go to either assessments over here in the middle, or on the right hand side where it says status assessments. And I want to hit add. And being that the employment and the diagnosis is only in relation to my adult, I need to toggle off my kid, and I'm going to add a status assessment. So this is a change has happened to one of those data elements that we collected at enrollment. And I'm pretending that it's been 3 months. And they've now been diagnosed with a mental health problem. So I'm going to say yes here. And they're now receiving services. And then they also are working, so they no longer have unemployment insurance, and they do have income, and I'm going to say that they're earning $1,500 a month. And when I'm all done here, I can hit save and close. And if it's saved successfully, then it'll go back to this screen. If I want to see my assessment that I did, I can click on this. Where's my little button? I can click on the edit button. Typically, we'll also have an edit button over here. I don't know why it's not showing up right now. But there's also one here on the left. And one thing I want to point out is there is one question that does not live on status or annual or exit screens, but only lives on the enrollment screen, and that's in regard to disabling conditions and barriers. You'll notice that we now have a yes here. Sorry, we now have a yes here that we didn't before, but we don't have that question that asks if they have a disabling condition. So because we've made a change in here, we need to go back to the enrollment screen. And we need to edit this question here to say yes now. We don't change any of these, just this one question. And we want to hit save changes. I 100% recognize that this is not convenient. It has been a new change that HUD put out last year, and unfortunately right now we're kind of stuck with it. So for program status assessments, when do we do them? We do them whenever there's a change to any of the following data elements: disabling conditions or barriers, cash income, non-cash benefits for folks that are over 18, if there's been a change with health insurance for anybody, a change in employment status for everybody over 18, education status is really whoever the change is for. So for example, Technically, when kids graduate from one grade to another, that would be a status change, but at this time, we're only recommending that you're recording that at their annual program assessment. So for program annual assessments, when do we complete those and for who? So we complete the annual assessments for everybody in the program enrollment, whether it doesn't matter if there were any changes or not. It's based upon the head of household's anniversary date, and we need to complete it either 30 days prior to or after the head of household's program anniversary date. And the reason why I'm stressing that anniversary date is, for example, if you have a parent that is in the program and 6 months later they've regained custody of their kids, well, 6 months later is the head of household's anniversary date. We would do an annual assessment for everybody that's now in the program, not just the parent. So it's all based upon the anniversary date of the head of household in that program enrollment. So kind of the point of doing status assessments and program assessments, again, these are all benchmark criteria that are things that need to be stabilized to help stabilize individuals or households' housing. So what it does on the back end of the data is it allows us to graph changes over time. And so in this example, this is a graph on income. And so what we have is they had $20 at enrollment, and then at one point they had no money. And then in November, which is 2 months after enrollment, they gained $800 in income. And then a few months later, their income increased to $1,200. And that was recorded at their annual. And then when they exited, their income had actually decreased. So that's why you see a small little blip here. It goes down, and it goes up, and then it went down at exit. But this gives us a lot of good information. So what program enrollments gives you your baseline or your starting point. Status and annual assessments track your progress, and the exit tracks what happened at the end of your program enrollment. What your services do is it tells us what services you provided that may have impacted these data elements. This was that question that we just did, where if we changed one of these no's to a yes, that we had to go back to the enrollment screen and change this back to a yes. To do an annual, just like the status, we can either go over to the right and click on the add button for the annual, or we can go up here to assessments and click on annual assessment. So when I hit start here, essentially everybody is toggled on, and being that this is an annual assessment, we want to complete this for everybody. So I'm going to hit annual assessment, and I'm going to say that it has been a year and that nothing changed for my adult. So all this stuff stayed the same. And what you'll notice is, remember at enrollment, we said they were receiving unemployment insurance at $750 a month, and now and then we did a status assessment at $1,500. All of this stuff cascaded for us from the last screen. So that way, all we have to do is make our changes. We don't have to fill out every single one of these things, but we do want to make sure we're reviewing it with our clients in case there are changes. When we're all done, we scroll down to the bottom and hit save and next. And then it's going to take us to add annual assessment for client Tina to test kid. Because remember, we toggled both on because this is an annual assessment. So for our kid, if it's been a year and nothing has changed, the one thing we want to make sure we're recording is, in most cases, kids will progress through school. So what we can say is they've now completed 11th grade. And I can hit save and close. And then once we're done, what you'll see is we have the status assessment here, and we have an annual assessment here.